there, listeners. Are you ready to get involved, make a difference, and support BCS? Well, let's give a big shout out to the Birmingham Covington School PTA, a team of hardworking parents and teachers right here to back you.
We're lucky to have parents and teachers stepping up to lead and support everything that makes BCS a great place to learn. From organizing events to funding projects, just like this podcast, the PTA is here to make our school community stronger.
So if you're in Mr. Nepa's or Mr. McLeod's classroom, remember the BCS PTA is here for you. Have any questions or want to get involved? Reach out at bcspts at abcs@gmail.com.
Thanks to the PTA for making BCS Hi everyone, welcome to an episode of the Literary Podcast. I'm Sophie.
And I'm also Sophie.
And today we're going to be discussing The Art of Bookmaking by Washington Irving.
So we're going to go through the summary of the art of bookmaking, and we're also going to be looking into the deeper meanings of it and how books were made back then.
And with that, let's get started. So the first part of this is how Irving goes over how books are not just their intellectual form, but it's their physical form, which matters for several reasons.
So the papers and covers back then, they meant a lot to readers, and they cost a lot of money. They were expensive.
So people only want to buy the book to look good to them. And that's basically what Irving talks about in this first part of the book. On to the next part of this book, Irving goes over how books are more than just mere writing.
It's not just the writing that's in the book. It's about the brains put into it.
It's more about the person, really, is what Irving tries to communicate in this section of the short story. On to the third part, Irving then goes over how books deserve the same exact appreciation as other masterpieces.
Like paintings and sculptures, it takes so long to do all the architect into it and all the thought and brain into it.
And books deserve the same exact appreciation is what he's saying, because it's basically the same amount of work, but in just different fields of work.
Yes.
And so I'm not quite sure at the time was implying, maybe the books were, I don't really know much about that time period, maybe books were not appreciated as much. What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Well, and with that, let's go on to the next section. Finally, Irving goes over the intellectual labor involved in making books.
Yes, today we're doing M-Step in school and iReady. And once you're done with the test, you feel so exhausted, and that's what happened to authors when they finish their book.
Yeah, because they poured over hours handwriting it, and they want their books to be good. So it's handwrite for hours, or typing it up, or printing it. It was a really hard process back then. They had these typewriters get jammed so often.
Yeah.
And with that, we're now going to move on to our next segment, which is deeper meanings found in The Art of Bookmaking by Washington Irving. Our first deeper meaning is the fragility of human achievement.
So let's think about it like a medal. You won a medal, and 2 years later, everyone forgets about it. All the authors wrote a book, and everyone just forgot.
No one really knows about them either. Yeah. And what Irving goes over, he goes over how authors from the 17th century have now been forgotten because new authors have stepped in and made way. And as a result, other works have been forgotten. And this is actually quite sad because I'm sure those authors poured so much time into making their books, hoping that people would enjoy them and just doing what they loved. So it's kind of sad that now they're not as popular as a really big author.
Yeah, they stayed 7 years making the book, and everyone just forgot about it. And now it takes 3 years, and everyone likes the book.
But one day they too be forgotten, and that's the fragility of human achievement, which just happens. The next one is the intellectual, aesthetic, and cultural separation of books. This is really how books teach you about different cultures and aesthetics or traditions all around the world, you know?
Yeah. So I'm Lebanese, and you can get books to learn about Lebanese people and their culture and how they celebrate different traditions.
And I'm Indian, and you can learn about my culture too. So it's a very interesting culture. All cultures are very interesting,
Yeah.
and I think that books are very useful when it comes to learning about other cultures all around the world. And with that, let's move on to our third segment. So the first part in the process of making a book is the author's creative spark. This is where the author gets the idea to do it, you know? And when the author gets the idea to do this, they go on to write the book, and that is how the book comes into life, and they begin to write it, and so on. That's basically the start of it, how Irving describes it at least.
On to the second step. Now we're going to be talking about how they edited their books in the past. Once they finish the whole book writing it, they have to go back and see what mistakes they did, and they have to rewrite it all. Well, now with our technology, like we can delete it and then like rewrite it, so we don't have to rewrite the whole book.
So now to the third step that Irving describes, the typesetter, who describes as the architect of the page. He highlights the typesetter's importance and preparing the manuscript for publication. And the typesetter is basically the one who gets it all ready and formats it into a book form to be published, so that when the binder has to do it, it's easier. And the typesetter is considered to be very important in the process of making a book. And with that, let's go on to the next fourth step. So now on to the fourth one. This one was the printer, who was one who printed it. They had these were print machines back then, and they had to crank it handle. It was really hard.
They had to crank it. Well, now we just type on our computer and press print, and it'll print it for us, but they had to crank it.
Yep, and this is very important because, well, you can't have a book without the pages of a book.
Yeah.
So they had to obviously print it, get it all out, and this was considered the most heavy part when it came to labor. But besides that, the rest of it was pretty much just intellectual labor, as I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, and how many papers did Irving have in his books?
Oh, in the sketchbook, he had over 300.
So they had to crank it 300 times.
That must have been a pain.
More.
That was an absolute pain.
That must have been really
Well,
painful.
let's go to the next one, which is a bit more fun in my opinion. This next one is the binder, when he binds the book. They had hand bind it, which obviously was laborious, but in my opinion, it was also really interesting. And well, that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. Today we gave you a summary, we went over the different meanings, and we told you how books were made back then, according to what Irving said. Subscribe to this episode. Bye!
Bye.